welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to confidence in starting and growing your business. My guest this week is Richard Barkey, CEO and founder of Imparta. Imparta are a global leader in performance improvement for customer-facing teams. And I first met Richard way back in my days as a director for PR business. That's nearly 20 years ago. And I have to say, he asked me all the awkward questions about the impact and effectiveness of PR that I really didn't want any client to ask at the time. And even though it made my life a little bit awkward, Richard stuck in my mind. He changed my thinking and won my admiration along the way. Perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised by Richard's analytical skills. As you'll hear, Richard is a highly successful entrepreneur who started his business life as an engineer. And that's where we joined the interview. Did Richard always want to be an entrepreneur?
I think when I came out of business school, I think I wanted to run a big company. And then I joined McKinsey and spent a couple of years working with people that did run big companies. And I realized fairly quickly that that actually wasn't what I wanted to do at all, because running a large organization, by which I mean, thousands of people, you're quite distant from the coalface, and essentially you're managing people and concepts. And while that's good and a key part of what one does, I am an engineer at heart, I guess, and I love being very close to the product and having ideas and generating things that really suit the market. So I wanted to do something that was my own business, and I was looking for ages while I was at McKinsey at different options, and I got involved with doing internal training at McKinsey and running some of the workshops and things. And at the time, I don't have much time for this these days, was quite an avid computer gamer, and I was like, what if we could create an adventure game for consultants where they compress that first year of experience into a few hours and learn all of the lessons you learn through failure, essentially, in that first year, and get that out of the way on day one. And so I actually stepped back from consulting, and with McKinsey's blessing at the time, and built the first kind of conversational strategy simulator back in, this was 1990 or something like that, 93, I think it was. And then that became the basis for Imparta, and I spun the business out in 97, again with McKinsey's blessing. And that was kind of where my love for learning, my love for business, and my love for technology came together. And then here we are nearly 30 years later.
And was you said your degree was in engineering. I mean, was being an engineer in your mindset? Were you thinking I want to be an engineer before you reached this conclusion about sort of setting up your business? Or I can see the engineering mindset, but did you ever actually want to be an engineer, or did the study of it put you off?
No, I was. So after university, I actually worked as an electronic design engineer for a few years. In signal processing. Back then, I invented a new way of terminating radio telephone units. So I actually did do electronic design for a few years, and I guess my kind of ambition and interest in business led me to then go to Harvard Business School, but only after I'd done engineering. And I do think that engineering is a very good background for business, because it teaches you analytical skills, but also creativity and ideation. And I think those two things together are quite a strong background for, for success in business.
So let's go to 1997. Then there you are, day one, Imparta. And were you just sort of? I mean, did you have any idea what to do next? I mean, what was there? Were you thinking, okay, I've done it now, I've set up my business, or were you quite comfortable and saying, I've got this sort of approach, a way of doing things? And did you feel comfortable? Did it feel weird or difficult, or did it feel very natural for you right at the start?
It felt exciting, obviously. It was also a bit of a shock. So you go from being a consultant with a large name and everybody knows who you are, and you fly business class, to nobody knows who you are, you're paying for yourself. So that was a bit of a culture shock. But I think in those early days, it was a long time ago now, so I'd built this kind of strategy simulation. I was halfway through building a marketing one. So the first year, I suppose, was really finishing that off, and McKinsey was the client for that then. But soon after that, I was working a bit with Neil Rackham, who was the inventor of spin selling, when I was at McKinsey with a guy called John De Vincentis, who was a partner at McKinsey on a project. And Neil and I kind of stayed in touch, and he and I were talking about could you apply this kind of learning to sales? And also, Neil had invented this thing called creating client value. And I brought some ideas to the table around strategy and around risk alleviation and some of the elements that became the creating client value program after that. So Neil and I and my growing team at that time did work together to build the first sales simulation, conversational sales simulation. So we were pretty busy in those early years, and that was fun. I should say as well that fortune, as is often the case, and serendipity were at the heart of that change. So while I was at McKinsey, I was running some courses at London Business School and actually teaching strategy at London Business School as a kind of a corporate education guest speaker, if you like. And through that, I met somebody who offered to invest in the business, and it was that kind of kicked off the move away from McKinsey and into the business. So I did have some funding in those early days.
Was that something you were always looking for? Did you originally think, oh, organic growth might be the way forward?
I think I was, but looking for investment per se probably hadn't been top of mind. And this gentleman came along and basically said, "I love what you're doing. How much do you want?" I just said, "I don't know. Can I tell you? Can I tell you tomorrow?"
But yes.
Morris was this guy's name, lovely chap, and we went on quite a journey together. But that did allow us to build the team, and we took some missteps in those early days. There were probably things I invested in that may not have been my choice now to invest in. There's a lot to be said for bootstrapping, I think, but investment does allow you to make quick progress. That's the good thing.
So it acted as an accelerator, so that I mean, Morris must have seen something in you as well as in what you were doing. I mean, did he say at the time, what it was that he thought was something in you that you could bring out more as the business grew?
I think what he saw, yes, I think so. I think he saw a vision for what could be the way of doing things in the future. So kind of more technology, and don't forget, this is 30 years ago, so kind of e-learning was very much in its infancy. There really wasn't any gamification at that point or simulation-based learning. There were simulations that were about making decisions and putting them into a spreadsheet in a team setting, but there was nothing really that was conversational. You're talking to the computer and it kind of talks back. So I think he saw the vision there, and I think in me he saw somebody who was fairly smart, but also was incredibly committed, and that's been me for the last 30 years. I mean, once I've started something, I will stick at it. And, I work, through the night to get things done for clients and for us. So I think he saw that. I think he saw a dedication and a drive to kind of get past the sticky points, which, probably better than I did, he knew would be coming. But it is that commitment, I think, and that rigor that keeps you going.
Would you care to elaborate on the sticky points that were coming along? We have to show the bumps as well as the good bits on the journey.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say I've reinvented the business probably about, I think it's probably about 7 times now since those early days. And, we hit the dot-com bubble bursting in 2001, I guess it was, pretty soon after the company was founded. That was tough, and we had to make redundancies then, not because we had taken dot-com investment, because a lot of clients suddenly went, hang on a minute. We were still doing strategy training, and people would say, well, our strategy is to cut costs, so no thanks. So that was the first time, and we had to try and make redundancies. But in the end, we managed to avoid most of them by everybody in the team agreeing to take a pay cut of 20% to reduce the cash flow going out. And then at the end of the mini recession, if you like, we actually paid all that back to people so that everybody in the end made out okay, and we kept the team together. So that was something we did again actually during the pandemic. And so, we've always relied on our team and the goodwill and the culture, if you like, to get us through, as well as the as well as the economics. But other sticky points. I mean, there are great moments where you win big clients. There are some where you don't win the big deal that you think you should. And I guess if I look at the phases, my job has changed massively over the years. And I think as a founder, you often start off as a kind of chief marketer, chief product officer, chief salesperson. Then you become sort of a chief HR officer and you're trying to build the team. I think I then spent quite a while as product, then marketing, and then sales, a long time as sales. Right now, I'm pretty much the chief product officer again because so much is changing with AI. But we had to reinvent the company during the pandemic. And luckily, we saw that coming. So we were first to market with training around selling in a virtual environment and switching people to virtual training.
I've just got to interject there. So I'm not saying you literally saw the pandemic coming, but you thought something like that would happen, or was it an acceleration of a trend to online? Yeah.
So I was looking at it, and I think as an entrepreneur, one tends to be quite risk averse. So I was looking at it going, I don't like this. And there was quite a lot of research coming out showing the infectiousness of this disease was quite strong. So by the end of February 2020, we'd already moved clients across to virtual training and released a course on selling in a virtual environment before the lockdowns and all of that stuff were announced. So we did kind of, I wouldn't say I predicted that it was going to happen, but I thought there was a big enough possibility it was going to happen that we needed to act now in order to protect ourselves. So that we did. And then the same thing has happened with AI. When that first was announced, as LLMs became a thing, I was like, crikey, are people going to be able to just say, hey, ChatGPT, please write me a sales training course, and that's us done. So I was quite worried at the beginning, and then realized it was actually a way for us to generate amazing value for our clients by embedding the research and the intellectual property we have, which LLMs generally don't have. They're actually really bad at selling, but embedding that into things like role plays that now do what we used to have to do with decision trees and lots of choices about what you're going to say next. Now you can just do it as a natural conversation with the AI. So there was that, and then I'll finish and then pass back to you. But the last thing is agentic AI. So we got on top of AI, and then we're like, oh no. I'm trying to be polite here. It's all changing again. And now, it's no longer enough to have a chatbot that responds to somebody. You've got to have something that is autonomous and can do tasks and really help people to improve their performance. So it's accelerating. It used to be every 5 years. Now it's every 6 months. Something entirely new happens. That means you've got to rethink how you run the business. So I guess that agility and that foresight is important, but it's also, I'm going to say, it's pretty exhausting.
Yeah. So apart from those 6 or 7 things, it's been plain sailing for the last.
Yeah, it's been fine.
Right. I mean, seriously though. I mean, that you are in an industry that the conventional wisdom seems to me, at least, somebody who's been in and around this sort of subject area, a business or a sector that's been quite difficult to scale, that businesses that have started to scale have either sort of broken up or people have sort of gone because it's been very much a type of business where it's not given generally, stereotypically to scaling. How have you managed to scale and keep everything in one place, if you like?
That's a good question. And I think one of the main reasons for that is there are relatively low barriers to entry. So anybody who's been a sales leader at a company can leave, retire, sell themselves back as a sales trainer and cobble something together. There's been historically a bit of a barrier to switching in that people, like a certain methodology. They like Spin or Miller Heiman Blue Sheets or whatever. But it's a very fragmented industry because really anybody can create a business in it. I think what's happened over time is that the need for technology and the need for breadth and scope in what you cover. So it's not enough just to do in sales training just to do opportunity management. You have to do account management. You have to do negotiation. You have to do customer success. You have to do sales management, sales coaching, da 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 da. So in scope and in depth of technology, I think that has created barriers to entry that have allowed us to scale. I mean, we're not as big as I would like to be. I'll say that. There are bigger companies in the industry. We're catching up quickly. Interestingly, AI, in a way, it's creating more barriers, but it's also taking down some of the barriers because it's, building a new AI application is relatively quick if you know what you're doing. So I think I think the biggest barrier to entry going forward, and the thing that will help us to scale, is actually scope. So we can provide soup to nuts training, AI powered enablement on a global scale with human agents, AI agents, and everything combining together. And that is quite hard to replicate for other people. So that is what allows us to scale. And we're seeing, growth rates. We've grown consistently since the pandemic. Last year was not by very much because there were some headwinds, largely with people not making decisions quickly. But this year we're looking to grow at kind of 20, 25, 30%. So it is working in terms of what we're doing.
Okay, and that's great. We're going to get on a bit more towards around AI because I know that there's been developments in the development of your sort of products and services, so which I'd like to ask you about. I mean, you talked about moments where you won clients, good moments, and then you've talked about several sort of challenges along the way. Was there a breakthrough client where you thought, that's it, we're really getting this is really what we're doing is working? I just to encourage those sort of young entrepreneurs out there who are just starting about the difference a big client win can make. And secondly, second part of the question is, have any of those challenges that you have mentioned so far actually kind of caused you to thought, I don't know if we're going to survive this?
I'm sure there've been moments that the crash, the economic crash of whenever it was 2008 was
Yeah.
challenging. I mean, there have been. I think I've always had a real belief that we will keep going, and I'm fortunate to have had a good background and a good team around me. That confidence, I think, is something that is partly won through experience. It's partly your family background and things like that. So I'm very fortunate, and I recognize that in having that confidence distilled in me, I think, instilled, sorry. But it is, it's the belief. So let me put it this way. There is a thing in psychology called the locus of control. And people who have an external locus of control believe that the outcomes that they achieve are largely down to external factors, the market, your boss, that customer. And people who have an internal locus of control believe that essentially they drive their outcomes. And I have a very strong internal locus of control. Now, that can be a problem because when things inevitably go wrong, you take it personally and you take it hard. But it does mean that when you hit a roadblock, you don't go, that was an unpleasant customer. You go, what have I done wrong, or what could I have done better to overcome that? So I think that internal locus of control is important for long-term success as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And, if I'll come back to the kind of the good things, but there was one particular time in 2018, I think, where we were pitching for what would have been a game-changing deal. It was with a French company. We'd been over to Paris. We thought we were there. They liked us. We liked them. It was, multi-million pound a year account, or a multi-million pound account, because back then we were doing sort of project-based training, and we didn't win it. And it was absolutely gutting. I was absolutely torn apart by that. And I kept trying to kind of re-engage and sending them new things. And no, what that did though was to make me really step back and go, okay, this is too hard winning business like this. And that was when I made the first really important major strategic shift in the modern era, if I can call it that, of Imparta, where we kind of went from primarily doing project-based work, training a group of people to get them from here to there. And I said, we need to have more recurring revenue, and we need to be doing less service and more selling the intellectual property. And we rebuilt our whole e-learning because that was the bit they hadn't liked. And that basically led to a kind of a 5-year workathon for me to rebuild all of our intellectual property, all of our e-learning, and really to standardize that in a much more robust set of research. So sometimes those losses can trigger a lot of work and a lot of introspection, but something that really restructures and reforms the organization. So that,
And sorry, go on.
no, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say so, and you wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have failed to win that client.
Eventually, I think I would, but not as quickly and not as fervently, because that one really hurt. Equally, there are some times where, so we've worked with Cisco for many years, and with increasing and decreasing levels of interaction. Right now, we're working with them super closely with their main supplier of kind of sales intellectual property, and they've now renewed based on the agentic AI that we're doing. And that is a client that really pulls and pushes us to go in the right direction. So a large client can be very challenging, but as long as they're pulling you in the direction you want to go in, it's a really fantastic motivator. And, it means you don't have any choice but to do the things that you want to do.
And was Cisco the major breakthrough client
I would
that
say so,
you
yeah. I
picked
mean,
up?
there've been
Yeah.
a couple over the years. Even back in 1997, it was, let me think, it was Smiths Industries and WPP. So even then we had some landmark clients early on that really made a difference to us. But yeah, there's probably kind of 5 or 6 organizations over the 25 to 30 years we've been going that have made a real difference to the business, each of them in their own way.
I'd like to sort of move on to a couple of things. One is you talked about an internal locus of control and how strong
Mm,
that was within you. Is that something you are looking for within people you are
mm,
recruiting into the
yeah.
business, or are you looking for people who have got a bit more external in them to counterbalance what you're thinking, to challenge you? I mean, because that can be a good thing, but is it
Mm.
necessarily a good thing?
It can be a bad thing if it's too strong, because if you really are in a situation where you can't control it and you try to, that can be counterproductive. But in general, I find that people with a belief that they affect their own action, their own outcome, sorry, are the right sort of people to hire. So that is one of the tests we apply. There's a giveaway for anybody applying. And, it shows through in your language. So you ask somebody, think about the last deal you lost. What happened? Why did you lose it? If somebody goes, well, the client decided to go a different way, or they didn't like the price, or somebody undercut us, or the market shifted, that's probably not the kind of person I want, because they're not going to fight to fix whatever was not right. Somebody who goes, well, I didn't understand their needs well enough, or I didn't understand their decision criteria well enough, or I didn't anticipate what was going to happen in the market. That's the kind of person I want, because they're going to improve themselves all the time. They're self-aware.
Now, one other thing that's noticeable, very noticeable about your business is the success you've been having in the US. You've
Mm.
been operating internationally. And I remember, visiting your offices many years ago in the Fulham Road.
Yep.
I think you're
Yeah.
still there, are you, as well?
We
In
were
the
in
Fulham.
Parsons Green. We're now on the Fulham Road, but yes, yeah. I mean, we're
Right,
very
right.
much a virtual organization, but yeah.
Yeah. And then I also see on your website that you've also got an office at Lexington Avenue.
Mm.
So there you go. So you're broken to this. It's really, really hard. It's probably easy to say, I want to crack the
Mm.
US, but very, very hard to do. What have you sort of learnt about the company and also about the market along the way?
Yeah.
And how come you've succeeded where quite a lot of people have failed?
I don't know if we fully succeeded. My measure of this is, how many RFPs that go out in our space do we get on the long list for in the US? And actually, that has gone up recently. I think we are doing better, but there are sort of economies of scale in that, because the bigger you are, the more you can spend on marketing, the more presence you have. My one regret is that I didn't write a book. If I'd written a book 10 years ago, I think we'd be much bigger now than we are. But because books in the US are a really good source of marketing, and most of the competitors we have who've done well, Challenger being an example, did well on the back of research and a book. So that's one regret. But I think I'm trying to think of the sequence of what we did. I think we won clients in the US first from here. So I mean, GE was one of our first clients, and we won that account while I was sitting in Parsons Green and flying over to GE and going to Crotonville and all the rest of it. So I think we took a sort of guerrilla approach to that of winning clients first before we had boots on the ground in the US, and having a lighthouse client that you can refer to and that you can get referrals from is very important. But it has taken a while, and I think we've used the kind of networking approach. We've used awards, so there are lots of US based awards that we have won consistently over time. The analysts, so we're a leader in the most recent Gartner Magic Quadrant for sales training and in the most recent Forrester Wave for sales training services. So those things help because those are the routes that people take when they're looking for somebody to provide a particular service. We do, sponsor events and go to conferences and things. How effective that is very expensive. I mean, to go to a big conference can be, £150,000, which is a fairly big investment of time and money to do that. So it's taken a while. I'll be honest. It's taken a while. We also made an acquisition in the US, which was very effective in terms of strengthening our team over there, but also in building our awareness in the population that we're aiming to work with.
So that's been an accelerator, has it? I mean, if you'd have just grown organically in the US, you wouldn't have had the success that you've had today through the acquisition.
I think the AI stuff has really kind of driven its own success in a way. So I think that would have happened with or without the acquisition, but certainly the acquisition made a meaningful difference in terms of the bench strength we had in the States, and kind of 3 or 4 big accounts that we got into as a result of that acquisition. So it was helpful.
Okay, so and also you've been named top sales training company in 2025 by Selling Power. The recognitions, you mentioned a few others as well. I mean, I know that's good for the business, and I'm sure the team feel great about that kind of thing. But does that mean much to you personally, or is it a bit of confetti on top of the, celebration, or does it mean a lot to you personally?
I think it does actually. I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question, Trevor. But you know what? You don't get much validation running a business. You probably know this yourself. And the one person that nobody ever thanks or credits for what they've done is the CEO, which is fine. I mean, you kind of get used to that over time, but it is a it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a bit of a lonely job sometimes. And I think those bits of validation, whether it is somebody on the team who breaks the mold and goes, actually, Rich, I just want to say that was really good, thank you, or something external like Forrester Wave or Selling Power or Training Industry Top 20, where we've been on that list for 15 years now. And every time it happens, I'm grateful because A, it helps us, clients see that and it gives them confidence. And B, it is nice to know that we're still doing something that is valued. So yeah, I think it does mean a lot personally, actually. Yeah.
And that's great, and so it should as well. So I'll say it my unbiased way. I mean, every leader in the development of a business, you find that you yourself as a leader will change. You will sort of develop, and you have to evolve. Partly through the number of people around you and the challenges. I mean, would you say that there are strengths and weaknesses, that you have realized? The strengths you realize is all the weaknesses, the things that you've kind of learned to work on or limit.
Yes, I've learned a lot about leadership and about who I am and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I think knowing your weaknesses is really, really important. So let me talk about what I've learned is important, first of all. And I think, naturally I'm an engineer and I get stuck into the product. And that's been really helpful over the last few years because technology has driven so much. And I think I sort of sit at the intersection of research into selling, understanding human change processes and technology and AI. And that's a fairly unique position that we as an organization and I personally sit in, and that's great. The other thing I have learned that I need to make myself focus on is the people side. And not that I'm not a people person, I am, and I care deeply about the team, but I don't often have time to coach as many people as I would like. The thing I've learned and this is actually one of my sort of friends and somebody who was a director of the business for a long time, a guy called Dave Stephen, gave me a book that was essentially about hiring the right people. And I think that was one of the best things he ever did for me, because making sure you've got the right team in place is key. And it's very easy to hire somebody who sounds good but isn't good. And there are ways you can really kind of drill into them and really test their CV and do role plays and things that mean that you're shifting your probability of getting the right hire, and that makes a big difference. So that's something I've learned to be better at, and to take more interest in, not to delegate senior hires, because that, especially sales hires, because it's too important. What I'm not good at is process and operations. And, I am not somebody who is good at looking at a set of KPIs every week and going, oh, that's changed. Let's figure out the root cause and do that. Like, I can fix things if there's a big challenge, but I struggle to keep that going on a cycle and to design processes. So I have to have around me people who are very good at that. And in fact, quite a big event for us earlier this year was bringing on a deputy CEO, a lady called Charlene Lyons, who has been fabulous and has really helped me to allow me to focus on the product stuff, because she's been much more kind of nurturing of the organization and the processes in the organization, and kind of helping with some of the problem spots than I would have had time to do, or perhaps the ability to do. And so complementing one's own skills with somebody else who has a different set of skills, I think, is one of the best things you can do as an entrepreneur.
So a couple of times you mentioned your movement towards a more product focus role. And so is that your happy place then? You're back in your happy place of developing products, like seeing the future coming and developing things to meet the challenges. Is that too simplified a way of putting it, or not?
It's sort of a happy place. It sort of isn't, because it's very difficult to have different tasks running at different speeds. And so development, whether it's developing a course or an AI solution, requires, I always liken it to going down the coal mine. It's have to go down the coal mine and sit at the coal face and hammer away. But if I can be left alone for a few weeks to do that, it's great, and I can be super productive. But as the CEO of a business, that's not how it works. So I have a full calendar with, that's why it's been so hard to get things in the diary with you. But, client calls and somebody saying, I just need to talk to you about this issue. So every time that happens, I have to come up from the coal mine, climb up to the surface, look around and go, where am I? What's going on? What am I supposed to be doing now? And there's a cost to that. There's a cost of energy and time. So it is, and that's actually one of the great things that having Charlene here as deputy has really helped me to do, is to make that transition a bit less, so I can be more productive and then come back to. But I like being a CEO. I like the strategic view of the organization. I like leading. In terms of, the actual enjoyment of the task, the AI stuff I love doing, because it is exciting, it's new, and you can achieve things quickly. Writing content and doing research in courses, I'm probably slightly over that.
Okay.
Being completely honest.
But that's fine. So you in terms of AI, I mean, one thing that's caught my eye is your linking of AI and coaching. You've developed a new product. I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, why it's so important, and also, I suppose we can maybe go on to develop this into talking a little bit about not only the potential, but a few of the pitfalls, if you like, of AI in this area.
Yep. So we have a change process that begins with assessing the skills that somebody needs to get better at, choosing the highest impact ones to work on and how to work on them, doing the learning, applying the skills in the field, and then making it stick. And that's our kind of change process. It runs in different contexts. It runs for courses, maybe once or twice a year, for a quarterly campaign to deal with the new entrant or a pricing issue or pandemic or whatever. That might run 4 times a year. It also runs that little process very quickly every day when somebody's doing the work. You might be in Salesforce and something happens and you're like, oh, I need to get better at doing that. And then a manager might do that for your career on a kind of monthly basis, looking at where your gaps are and helping you to get better. So that change process is very, very important. And what we've created is we now have, originally it was 20 use cases. Now it's more than that, agents that sit around that change process. So we have agents that assess your calls, that assess your emails, not to promote you or to fire you, but to help you get better at specific skills and give you feedback on what you can do better. We have things that curate learning for you. We have agents that deliver training or bring in e-learning from outside that help you to practice key skills with role plays. We have agents that will help you to write things, that will help you to prepare for a call with a customer by looking that customer up, figuring out what they care about, what the business cares about, and simulating that call for you before you have it for real and giving you feedback. We have things that will email you and go, hey, you've got something coming up in the diary next Wednesday. Do you want to have a chat before that to make sure you're fully prepared? So the change process is the North Star, and the AI agents are there to help us to help people to get better at using that change process. And I think it's that sort of human oriented aspect that's very important, because a lot of people who are using AI, they're technologists, but they don't really understand the domain in which they're trying to operate. They don't understand what selling is, and they don't understand how you get somebody to change their behavior. So an AI role play that looks cool, but doesn't understand the difference between somebody who recognizes a need and somebody who has an explicit need that's recognized by a stakeholder group, and somebody who recognizes the urgency of that need, and somebody else who's quantified the value if they act. Each of those is a different challenge. And most kind of point solutions don't have that level of sophistication. So I think that's kind of where we see the power of AI. You asked about the pitfalls, and I think
Yes.
there's a lot of attention right now around a couple of studies, one with MIT and another one with people in medicine doing endoscopy, that looked at what happens with people who are doing tasks with AI first and then trying to do it themselves, versus doing it naturally themselves and then using AI to refine it. And what we're finding, and these are quite small studies so far, but intuitively, I think this is going to be proven at scale, is that people who rely too much on AI suffer. Their performance suffers. So if you use AI to do endoscopy and then you try and do it yourself, you are, I think it was 6 or 7% less effective at spotting issues than you were before you used AI. If you answer an exam question using AI, the level of neural activity that you have in your brain is something like 40 or 47% less than it would have been otherwise. And even a few minutes later, you can't remember what you've just said because you used AI. And there's a term for this, which is cognitive offloading. It's we're delegating thinking to a software, and that is not a good idea. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say, do you have a particular? I want to, obviously, I want to emphasize the positivity in what you're saying as
Mm,
well, because I on social media, I've described myself as an AI optimist. I'm
yes.
neither an evangelist nor a
Yep.
skeptic, so I remain in the optimistic camp. Do you think some people have drawn a sort of societal or generational thing that people coming up into the workforce might be more prone to this sort of damage, for want of a better word, to their cognitive
Mm.
abilities? Is that fair, or should I not stereotype it in that way?
I don't know it's going to be, well, maybe. No, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure that is right. I think it's something that can affect anybody, because there are some people who are still kind of hiding in the cupboard and pretending that AI isn't there, but most people have figured out that it actually is quite useful. So I think there are things we can do about it, and one of them is why coaching is so important. So a lot of people misunderstand what coaching is, and they think it is about giving feedback or telling somebody how to do something. The in the business world, coaching really generally means something that is more empowering. It's about asking a set of structured questions, insightful questions based on the coach's knowledge, but not, it's not about the coach, it's about the coachee being guided through a process so that they can do it themselves on their own next time. And that's how, when we're doing coaching with AI, whether it's of a manager or a salesperson, that's how we use AI, is to kind of get people to think for themselves. So that avoids the problem of cognitive offloading. And I think the other issue is, you can tell when somebody's pasted AI into an email and it's typically not very good. but it's also a little insulting because and you can see the
Long
language
hyphens.
quirks, the long M dash, it's not just this, it's that. It's like, oh, come on, you can be bothered to write to me. So helping people to understand that this is a tool, it's an enhancement of what you do. It's not a replacement. It can replace some things. And in, customer service, that's happening increasingly. But in my domain, which is B2B sales and B2C sales with a personal component, I don't think we're going to have AI replacing us yet, but it can enhance us and it can do that very, very well.
Great. I want to get back to where we sort of began, really, that somebody listening to this podcast, who's just starting their entrepreneurial journey as you did. I mean, we want to give our listeners the confidence to succeed, overcome challenges. Is there any advice that you'd give to a sort of a startup entrepreneur who was starting out, for the first time today?
Yes. Now think about what they are. So the first one is watch the cash. Cash is king, and you really have to, if you're starting a business, you have to know what's coming in and out every day, have a spreadsheet or a tool that monitors that for you. That's just a basic thing, but you won't last long if you're not on top of your cash flow. More fun and interesting than that, I think, is about not getting stuck in the lab. So don't try and design a product or come up with a solution in isolation. It's very easy to do that, especially now when you can build things and prototype them very quickly. And I certainly would aim for a rapid cycle of prototyping, testing with customers. You have to engage with the human beings you're trying to sell to understand if what you're doing is something they actually want and how to refine it. So don't lock yourself away and build a product. And this is probably, I think we spent too long in the early days building a product before really getting out there and seeing how it got used in the real world. So engage early and often with your real customers. I think that'd be my biggest thing. And then the second thing would be surround yourself with people who are better than you. And that's, if you're good enough to start a company, that can be quite challenging, but spend a lot of time choosing who you have on board, because they make your life a lot harder or a lot easier.
Blimey, there's so much in that interview that fascinated me about Richard. For a start, he's managed to grow a business in a sector that has in the past been very difficult to scale up in. He's true to his engineering roots in his obvious love of designing products and solutions that his customers really obviously want. And he made so much sense on AI and coaching. He seems to have this very calm and forward-looking approach at a time when many others, like me, need his help to get through the chaos or confusion. So thank you to Richard for that. And let's think of those lessons at the end. The one that stuck out for me was don't get stuck in the lab, designing a product in isolation. We claim to understand our customers, but do we really? Or are we perhaps a little bit afraid sometimes to ask for fear that we may hear some inconvenient truths? So, as Richard says, let's engage with our customers early and often. So thank you to Richard, and thank you to you, our growing band of listeners, and the great feedback we're getting on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you, of course, to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast, look for me, Trevor Meriden, or our business Merriborn on merriborn.co.uk. Well, that's about it. And until the next time, thanks for listening.